Hi everybody, this is Brendan with WhiskeyRiverTrading.com, and this is my friend Old Man George, and he's up here visiting us in Wisconsin today and camping out in his camper. So everybody say hi to George.
Hello.
So George is out of Mustang, Oklahoma. Where's that located?
Mustang, Oklahoma is completely surrounded by Oklahoma City, and so it's a 12 square mile town, and but a huge school district and a big school. And I live in the Oklahoma city limits, but my mailing address is Mustang.
Yeah. And I got to stop at his place on the way home from Christmas in Texas in 2019.
Yeah. Spent the night.
Yeah, I spent the night.
I went to a Mexican restaurant.
Yeah, I went to a Mexican restaurant, got tacos. So I figured I'd let you tell the story on how you and I met.
I guess we met at Hayward in 2018. You had a booth up there, and I was into axe collecting at the time and didn't even know about such a thing as a axe junkie. And you said, well, you're an axe junkie, so here's your bumper sticker. I still have it.
Yeah, so in Hayward, Hayward is the Lumberjack World Championship, and
I've been going up there for years. Attended probably every year in the last 14 or 15 years that I could, and that's not exactly every one of them, but
yeah.
And on some occasions the show down at Oshkosh, the Experimental Aircraft Association's annual get-together called Air Venture at Oshkosh, is usually the week before Hayward, and I can go to both of them, but this year they're on top of each other, so only got to stay 2 days down at Oshkosh and 2 days up at Hayward.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, the Lumberjack World Championship, for those of you that don't know, is like I guess timber sports would be something that's compatible to it. But there's log rolling.
Been going on since 1960 in Hayward. Started by a man by the name of Tony Wise, and this was the 61st annual.
Yeah, and it was. It didn't happen in 2020, so right. 2021 happened. I didn't attend, and Whiskey River didn't attend, but George got to go.
Yeah.
For the finals.
Yeah, it was a good show. There was 99 competitors, I believe. Of course, they do not only axe work up there, they do sawing,
climbing,
double buck sawing, single buck sawing, men and women, and then a man and a woman called the Jack and Jill double buck. And then they do the 60-foot pole climb, the 90-foot pole climb, and they do log rolling, men and women both, and then they do boom running. And boom running is kind of a throwback to the days when they used to float all the logs down the rivers and streams in Wisconsin, and they had what they call river pigs, and the river pigs rode the logs and kept them from getting jammed up and whatever. So today, to commemorate that activity back in the old days, they call it boom running, and these logs are stretched across the lumberjack bowl up there, and they're on swivels, so you got to be really adept at running on top of a log that's free floating and free swiveling, and not fall in the drink.
Yeah, the Lumberjack World Championship is very far from just a circus act. These are people are like serious athletes,
yes,
serious woodsmen. They know what they're doing.
They train all year round, and they do the steel timber sports activities too. Some of them are champions in that category too.
Yeah.
And I don't know what exactly the prize money is at Hayward, but evidently it's pretty good because people usually come from around the world. This year, there were no competitors from New Zealand and Australia and the Czech Republic like there was in 2019.
Yeah, they come from all over.
Yeah.
I was curious who your favorite, in the last 15 years, who's your favorite
Axeman,
or sawman or climber? Is there a...
Well, the man that I really enjoyed watching and got to talk to up there, they were very personable. Most of the competitors like to visit, was a man by the name of Jason Wynyard from New Zealand. And Jason and his wife, both Carmen, competed there for several years. He, I think he's still competing. He had several surgeries. He had some knee surgery and maybe even some back surgery. Mm-hmm. But he was a gentle giant. He was just a guy that he set several records over time. Some of them still stand, I believe, with the axe and the saws. He was a sawyer and axe man. Did the axe throw and the chopping disciplines, where you have the underhand chop and the standing block chop and the springboard chop.
Yeah. Yeah, and these guys are just machines, just monsters to be able to swing this heavy axe. What are they, 6 pounds?
5 pound racing axe.
5 pound racing axe, yeah. Short handle.
30-inch handle, 32-inch handles, and they swing for the fences, basically.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, that's how you and I met.
Yep.
Was up at Hayward, and George helped me out in my booth in 2019 when I was up there by myself and hung out. And
I think I bought an axe from you in 2018, a fireman's axe made by man.
Yeah, a vintage one.
Yeah.
A vintage one that I had
Right.
that I had picked out of Texas, actually. That came out of a collection down there.
And I had my my little boy's Plum Victory National that had an oak handle in it, and I had it on a sling over my shoulder there, and shortly thereafter you came out with a sling very similar to that.
Yeah, for the Forest Service axe, you know, that style. Is that a 2.5 pound plum?
Yeah, 2.5 pound Plum National made Plum Victory. So I guess it was basically a World War II vintage axe.
Yeah, for sure. That's that's a really neat piece.
I hung that handle into that head because I bought 2 axes at an antique store in Blackwell, Oklahoma, and the 2 pieces had opposite handles on them. The wrong handle in each head, so I swapped the 2 heads, and it's an old oak handle. It's got a lot of character. It has some burn marks on it. Somebody left it too close to the campfire or whatever, but it's really got a lot of character. The handle does, and it's nice to carry. Is the Plum National your favorite pattern, or what is your favorite pattern axe? It doesn't necessarily have to be a I guess no. My favorite pattern is just a common double bit Michigan pattern, probably, or Western pattern, either one. My grandfather was worked in a sawmill in Mississippi at the turn of the century. Turn of the 1900s.
Yeah. The last century.
Yeah. And he could handle an axe. Of course, he grew up in rural Kentucky, and axe was an essential part of the learning how to work when you were a kid.
Yeah.
And so he had this double bit axe, and I've got it today, and he could certainly handle it, even though he wasn't a woodsman, but he cut a lot of firewood back in days when there was no other form of energy for the homesteads, like no electricity and no natural gas in Oklahoma at that time. In the parts they came to Oklahoma in 1914 when my dad was 6 years old, and been there ever since. But he had this axe, and he kind of inspired me because of the way he could handle that and chopping up wood to burn in their. I can't remember them having a wood burning cook stove. They had a kerosene cook stove, and I could remember, and they had a wood burning heating stove in the house, and they burned wood to heat the water to do their laundry with out in what they call it was an old converted chicken house that there was a laundry room.
Oh, crazy! It was like detached from the house.
Oh yeah, it was on the farm in Oklahoma, on the Oklahoma side of the border. We lived in the Kansas side of the border in a company camp when I was a child, and farmed in Oklahoma. And anyway, so that kind of the way he handled the axe and the way I remember him kind of inspired me to start collecting axes.
Yeah, for sure. And so the pattern axe that he has was a Western pattern?
Yeah, just a regular, garden variety.
Standard pattern.
Double bit axe, yeah.
Like a 3.5 pound.
Yeah, exactly.
So where was he? He worked at a sawmill?
Yeah, down in the Hattiesburg, Mississippi area.
Okay.
My dad was born in Collins, Mississippi, and my grandfather went down there as a young man. He was born in 1880, so he was probably 20 years old, 19 or 20 when he went to Mississippi, and then he came back to Kentucky and married my grandmother. who was, they grew up across the road from each other, basically in Nicholas County, Kentucky, and they got married in 1905, and then my dad was the firstborn in 1908.
And he worked at the mill when your dad was born?
Yes, and that mill was a big steam-powered mill, of course, and it was a bandsaw mill, and they were cutting longleaf yellow pine down there, clear cutting that country, and those pine trees were huge and tall. He said it was like 70, 80 feet to the first limb, and they were 4 foot in diameter.
Yeah, and you don't think of that area of the country as being logging country.
Well, it was huge back in the 1800s. For sure. They had their own little, each sawmill had their own railroads out into the woods to bring the logs to the mill.
Wow.
And they used the slabs and the sawdust to fire the boilers, and they blew up once in a while too.
Yeah.
But my granddad was a sawyer, and the sawyers in that particular mill, it was all steam powered, of course, and to control the carriage, it had basically like little joysticks. And I thought, man, Granddad, why would you ever leave a job like that? You had a lot of responsibility and good pay and whatever. Mm-hmm. Of course, they was working 12-hour shifts, two 12-hour shifts, either 24/7 operation. But he said he told me why he quit and wanted to do something else and come out to Oklahoma and go to farming because his father-in-law offered him to set him up in farming in north central Oklahoma. But he told me he lost his nerve, and I said, I never could understand what he meant by lost his nerve. Mm-hmm. And then I figured out later it's basically PTSD, because he'd seen a lot of accidents. They had men that rode the carriage that set the blocks, and moved the log over and all that stuff. And then you run the carriage from the sawyer run the carriage with these joysticks, and if you tweak that joystick just right, you could accelerate that carriage to the point where you throw the man off the carriage or into the saw, and that happened. People were mangled and killed fairly often. Yeah. And so the trauma of all that was something he didn't want to continue to deal with, so he came to Oklahoma and started farming wheat in the wheat country.
So how many years roughly was that? 10 years that he was a sawyer?
14 or 15 years, because he came, like I say, in 1914 he came to Oklahoma. He'd been 34 years old.
So he probably saw, even if it wasn't at his hands, he probably saw a lot of injuries. Yeah. Just even people not on site, out in the woods hearing about stuff.
And the sawmill company basically ran the town. It was, each little town or community was centered around the sawmill industry. Mm-hmm.
That's
so that's how I kind of got interested in axes. And then after I graduated college with an engineering degree, and then I was commissioned in the Army and ended up flying helicopters in Vietnam, and got out in February 1966. And before that, even I bought my very first what I'd call collectible axe, and it was a Plum autograph at an auction in my hometown. I guess I was either in high school or college at the time I bought that. Huh. Double bit Plum autograph.
A complete axe, handle and everything?
Yeah. And the handle's got, it's hickory, but it's got a lot of character too, a lot of age stains on it. And I kidded my two sons, my stepsons, and they were young when I got married, my present wife, and the kids were 16 and 10 or whatever. Yeah. And I told them the stains on that handle, I said, those are blood stains. Axe murderers.
You still have that?
Yeah.
You still have it?
Of course, their eyes got that big. But it was,
so you've owned that axe for like
50, 60 years, 70 years maybe.
60 years, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
that's
I was 60 years ago. I was 21, so it was before that. About
right around then. Yeah. So you flew helicopter. You flown a helicopter.
Yeah, I didn't. I didn't care what I flew when I signed up for. I went through advanced ROTC and got commissioned in the Corps of Engineers, and I also took ROTC flight training. So I knew I was going to go become an Army aviator, but I didn't know whether I'd go to helicopter school or fixed wing school. But even when I went in, I had my private license in airplanes at OSU, Oklahoma State University. And
so you'd flown planes in college?
Yeah.
Saying? Okay.
I was in the Flying Aggies, which was an intercollegiate flying competition club. Several schools had their competition club. And
yeah.
Ours was called the Flying Aggies, and we won the national meet the year I was flying.
Oh, cool.
But anyway, I ended up going to Fort Belvoir for my basic officer orientation classes, and then I had to go to Fort Walters, Texas for a primary helicopter school, and then I went to Fort Rucker, Alabama, and got my wings as an Army aviator in January of 1964. And in February of 64, I was in Vietnam. And I kind of became one of the first wave of replacements to the company that I was assigned to down in the Delta of Vietnam at Vinh Long. And it was the 114th Aviation Company, Air Mobile Light. And it was the very first TOE, which is Table of Organization and Equipment, for those that don't know military acronyms. Means they were chartered as the very first Air Mobile Light company in the Army. The Air Mobile concept was being tested and developed during those times in the early 60s. And they were formed up at Fort Knox, Kentucky in January of 63 and went to Vietnam in the June time frame of 63. So the first replacements was where I came in on the scene in February 64.
Okay. And
my buddy Ted Bartman and I flew. We were in flight school together. We roomed together at Fort Rucker, Alabama, and we rented. 4 of us rented an old trailer house off just outside the gates, and anyway, we ended up flying over to Vietnam, the same airplane from Travis Air Force Base to Saigon, and ended up going to the same company. So we stood in front of the new company commander. He wasn't even, I don't think he had even had a change of command yet, but both the original, or one of the original company commanders and the new one were both there at the time. We got there in time for the change of command ceremony. So we appeared before the commander, and of course we appeared together and saluted. And his name was Major George Young. And Major Young looked at Ted Bartman, and he said, "Lieutenant Bartman, are you married?" And he said, "Yes, sir." He looked at me and said, "Lieutenant Kokendoffer, are you married?" And I said, "No, sir." So he signed Ted to one of the slick platoons, which slick platoon means you're flying a helicopter without any external guns. It was made to haul troops, basically, but it had a crew chief and gunner that were armed in the back of the helicopter, and he signed me to the gunship platoon, which is called the Cobra platoon. And so I was flying gunships from actually my very first combat mission was March the 2nd of 64, and I flew gunships until October of 64, and then I was reassigned to a new unit that had come to the same location, 62nd Aviation Company, called the Outlaws. The 114th was called Knights of the Air, and like I said, the gunship platoon was called the Cobra platoon.
Yeah.
So I was flying mostly flew what was called the Hog, which was a heavy helicopter because it had 48 2.75-inch rockets mounted on the outside of the helicopter and pod on each side of the fuselage that carried 24 each. And the platoon leader liked to fly in that particular aircraft too, so I ended up flying the platoon leader a lot. And the other 4 ships usually in our operational mode were gunships and rockets. They had 4 flex-mounted M60 machine guns on the outside with a smaller package of rockets.
We had a little bit of a water pump making a bunch of noise, so now we're back. The cows are taking a drink, and yeah. So anyway, I was wondering what your favorite axe is that you have in your collection, because I know you have a lot of axes. Whether that's something that's embossed or that's something that has an interesting story.
Well, I can't think of anything that is a real interesting story, but I tend to look for the King Cutter marked axes that came out of the E.C. Simmons Hardware Company in St. Louis. And I've got some of those hanging on my wall, as you saw, and so I was enamored by the company's logo. You know, it says the price is long forgotten while the quality is remembered. It's not the exact words, but
yeah.
But anyway, that kind of rung a bell with me, and it's kind of my philosophy in life. I don't mind paying a little extra for the quality, and I forget about the price.
Yeah, exactly. When you're using it and it's working way better, it definitely comes into play.
So I started after I got out of the military, like I said, in 1966. I went ahead and went to use up my GI Bill to get some additional aircraft ratings. I had my instructor rating in airplanes and helicopters, had commercial license in helicopters and airplanes both, and had multi-engine rating and instrument ratings. And so I did some part-time flight instructing, and then I worked out in the Gulf of Mexico for a while, flying offshore and to the oil production process out there.
Flying people
out into the production platforms.
Yeah.
But anyway, I started kind of hitting antique stores and looking at tools in general. And mostly, I don't really necessarily consider myself just an axe collector. I like all kinds of edge tools. I even have quite a hammer collection and shovel collection.
Yeah.
And but anyway, I like to handle them. I call handle them, which means to me putting a hanging new head or putting
new handle in them. Yeah.
Put new handles in them, or just sharpening them and polishing them and just messing with them. And so over the time I've collected probably maybe 100 axes or so, and 25 or 50 hatchets and 30, 40 shovels.
Well, King Cutter's a really good brand for that, because like King Cutter brand made a lot of different things.
Yeah, they did.
So you could branch into more than just axes.
I've got a King Cutter pedal grinder that you set at, and big old sandstone sharpening stone. But King Cutter branded just about everything the household ever needed. But and I imagine they used mostly Kelly axes or Man axes to make their products.
Yeah, and just private labeled it.
Yeah, and they demanded them, a quality product from those manufacturers.
Yeah. So what's your favorite King Cutter product that you have? Do you have any
I have a King Cutter that's got a nice embossed logo on it with a King Cutter marked handle. So it's octagonal single bit. Michigan pattern.
It's octagonal. The handle's octagonal.
Yeah.
Wow, so it's all original.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What era do you think that is?
Well, 40s or 50s, maybe 60s at the latest. Probably.
Yeah. So one thing that George had kind of brought to my attention with axes was when I saw his collection, I saw a bunch with that, what we call the knob swell, but it looks like a bulb, and you'll see it in our 30C Heritage handle. And hopefully in the future Heritage handles that we are working on designing based on that one. But George has a bunch of the original ones.
Yeah, at one time I have at least 9 axes all the way from, and they're all single bits of course, but all the way from 6 pound down to 3.5 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Heads on them, and they range from King Cutter to Winchester to Kellys and True Tempers and whatever. But I had a special cylindrical style display rack I made on a Lazy Susan, because you can rotate it around and things.
Yeah.
And I recently purchased another handle like that with an axe head on it at a tractor show in Oklahoma, and you just don't see that handle style lying around very often.
Yeah, and they're all different.
Oh, yeah.
Like all the ones you have are different. It's
Yeah.
not like it was one manufacturer that just did that. It's his collection is kind of a good sign that's just how axe handles were back then.
Yeah, prior to switching to what is called a fawn's foot style, a single bit handle, I guess that was the norm. Prior to World War II, I'm assuming, because it takes a larger blank to make that style of handle, and wood got more scarce after World War II, and the people who decided to conserve the wood as much as possible, so they made the axes out of thinner stock.
Yeah.
And nowadays, sometimes the stock is not over an inch thick.
It's out of 4. Yeah, just 1 inch blanks, and these ones with the palm swell are 8/4, so 2 inch.
Yeah.
You know, like you're not finding them any thinner than that.
Right.
Which
and
really helps for hanging.
And really nice tight grain hickory.
Yeah.
From probably second growth hickory or whatever from the 1900s or whatever.
Yeah, sure. It would be crazy to think about how long ago those trees were planted, whether they were naturally planted or planted by someone. It's a really good chance that those were naturally planted trees.
Squirrels planted them.
Yeah. I mean, early 1800s.
Yeah.
You know,
you're
logging 100-year-old hickory tree, and right after the turn of the century. That's a really old tree,
right.
And now you still have those handles. That's a 200-year-old chunk of wood.
Right.
So that's something that I really like to try to explain to people is that it's an organic material, like these handles that we're dealing with.
And when you grab a hold of it, you can just feel the heritage of it. I mean, it's just a completely different feel to it than a new handle.
Yeah, than the baseball bat covered in lacquer that we have at the hardware stores now. Yeah, and they're warped and cracked, and the care just doesn't go into them anymore. So George was kind of the one who turned me on to this style of handle as being something that was obviously a standard by woodsmen back in the turn of the century, but wasn't available now through any retailer. So we got a hold of that pattern, which is really cool. I sent him one of the 30C Heritage handles. What did you put on it?
I put a 3.5 pound plum, the old square cornered plum. I think those are older stamps than the rounded corner ones. But anyway, it's I sent you a picture of it, I believe.
Yeah.
And I stained it. I really don't like the way it turned out on the stain. I had a little more red in it than I wanted. I used a brown leather stain and boiled linseed oil and paint thinner mixture.
Yeah.
And but anyway, it turned out just fine. It's a nice looking combination. Really very nice looking.
Yeah, and a lot of the ones that George have on the palm swell, on the end of the palm swell where you would be striking it with a hammer, have like lines, like circular lines.
Yeah.
And I've yet to find out how that tool, how it's getting that in the lathe, because of how we have this vintage pattern that we got from the 1800s that we're turning on, but our handles are coming off with a square ended.
Yeah,
it just doesn't make sense on how that circular mark would be there.
I think depending on how the handle is mounted in the lathe, whether you can get in there with a tool to do that turning on the lathe is the only way it could happen. Then maybe,
you mean like manually?
Yeah.
You think
or just like a wood lathe.
Mm-hmm. With the carving, chisels, Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, maybe they were cut differently on a different style of lathe. Now we have on modern lathes have cups. It's a circular cup, and there's no way that circular cup. There's a series of 4 on a big wheel, and there'd be no way that could get into that tight groove at the end of the handle.
Yeah, you need a dead center, or whatever you call it.
Yeah,
on the end.
But there's punch lines in the ends where you can see where the tool is chucked in. So we've spent hours talking about these handles, I would say, in between the two of us, whether that's at the Lumberjack show or on the phone, and just trying to dissect what that exactly is. So I'm hoping that we can do. I'm really excited to offer boys axe handles with a similar style swell. Maybe not as large.
Right.
Probably 7/4, maybe 6/4, but that same style.
And the other thing that would be very interesting is to develop a racing axe handle with that swell on the end, because I think the racing the guys in the competition lumberjack shows would enjoy a swell like that on the end of it or not.
Yeah, I'm curious if they would be interested in how thin that handle is. I feel like most of those guys are like, we don't want this to break.
No, they gotta have a strong handle, but
so they kind of go with the modern day
pretty broad,
style. It's a thick handle, but they're swinging it all they got. So they're kind of like,
and
it would suck if you're on the last.
Stick them pretty often too, so they have to yank them out.
Yeah, that's true. Right. Yeah, I didn't think about the getting it unstuck from the wood, but they'd hate to be on their last swing and snap the handle because it's this thin, curvy,
Yeah, that would be
fancy Instagram handle that we all like.
And they make it. The guys from New Zealand and Australia and all that, they don't use hickory in their handles. They have spotted gum.
Spotted gum, yeah, I've heard that.
Oh, different kinds of wood.
And the lumberjacks that are coming over here, they're running spotted gum handles? I haven't seen them up close.
I haven't. I look at the handles all the time up there at Hayward, and there's a man by the name of Warwick Halleck that makes handles out of hickory, and he laminates the palm swell and the eye wood to. He starts out with a like a
1 inch.
Yeah.
And then he makes it wider with laminating.
Yeah. And I've got one of those handles in my racing axe that I bought from Dale Beams. Dale Beams was a competitor from Australia at Hayward, and I finally I was bugging one of the competitors up there by the name of Peg Ingasser. I said, I want to buy a racing axe from somebody up here. So she went around to all the competitors and said, hey, you guys got a racing axe. I want to sell to this guy from Oklahoma. and Dale Beams and he came in and said, I got an axe for you. And I said, all right. So he brought it out there, and it had a split handle. And this handle was intact, but it had a split in it. He said, I broke this handle, but I said, I'll sell you this as is. And I said, okay, I'm interested. It's a Pro Axe brand, Proax head, made in Australia. He said they're out of business. They haven't been in business for a long time, but it was a good racing axe head. So I bought it, and then I put a Warwick Halleck. He's one of the competitors in the master class now. He's from Minnesota, and Warwick makes handles for the racing axes, and I bought a handle from him. Had the handle before I had the axe head.
Oh, that's funny. Is the laminate is hickory in the middle and then hickory on the outside?
Yep.
It's not a mixture of species?
No, it's all hickory.
All hickory? Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that axe. I just can't remember what it was. Have you swung it?
No.
No? Never swung it?
No.
Scared to?
Well, it's a lot thinner cutting edge than any of the axes that I use. But I talked to one of the competitors up there. He's 81 years old, the same age as I am. His name is Dave Stadler, and he's from Minnesota also. But anyway, Dave, I talked to him about using it for cutting, general chopping, and he said, oh yeah, he said, you can't hurt that axe especially greenwood. He said, it's got enough bevel to sustain.
Yeah, not roll over or chip or break or crack. Yeah.
So he said, just swing it, and I said, well, I don't think I'm gonna swing.
So it's hanging on the wall.
Yeah, and the bonus I got with that axe is the sheath that came with it. It came from the Royal Adelaide show. And it's all embossed on the leather, and that show has been going on for like over 100 years.
Over there.
Yeah, I guess it's like a lumberjack competition.
Yeah.
Show.
Huh. So Interesting.
It was neat.
Yeah. So, do you have any old man words of wisdom for anybody who's getting into tool collecting? Say 16-year-old comes to you and says, "Hey, I want to get into old tools. What are some things I should know?"
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, you should know what the tool looked like when it was new, as far as overall configuration, how much dimensional material it had on it, because if you're going to buy an old tool, it's obviously going to have some wear on it. And there's a point to where it's wore so bad that you'd never use it again. But a lot of people hang those things up just for the ambiance being an old tool. But most everything I have and what I would recommend people collect is something that can be used as a tool. And so that's, I guess,
that's a really good point. Yeah, and
there's catalogs. There's an encyclopedia of tools that you can look at, and there's a lot of antique catalogs on the internet that you can look at to see what the actual size of the brand new part was.
Yeah.
And I think that would be important to know, and then to decide how much wear you're going to accept before you buy something.
Yeah, and that's all going to be based on coming back around based on what you're using it for.
Yeah.
If you're going to plan on using the tool for,
there's a group on the internet that's new old stock collectors, and so occasionally you'll run across an old axe or hammer or hatchet that is never been used. It's just new old stock, and that's becomes a prized possession usually because of the fact that it depends on the brand and the decoration on it and the style can really be a valuable.
Yeah, I mean it's a rare that someone would buy a tool and then never use it.
Right.
Like why would you ever buy an axe and never use it?
And occasionally you'll find a store, an old hardware store somewhere that they closed the doors in 1997 or something, or 1975. The proprietor died and his kids didn't want to run it, and they just sat there for years and before it was liquidated. And you'll find brand new tools in there.
Yeah, well, kind of like I was telling you about those cases of Forest King handles.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's that same thing where it's just cases of a dozen handles at a case. I guess the guy originally bought them to make spindles out of for a staircase, and then or a contractor bought them because the customer wanted that, and then the customer decided to go a different route. Well, then he was stuck with a couple hundred single bit curved handles, which
and those handles. I saw one in your shop this morning. They are what I call a modified fawn's foot, because they have a flat spot on the end. A full fawn's foot, it comes to a point or an edge that's you don't ever hit on that edge directly. You have to have a adapter to suck the head onto the.
Yeah, otherwise you'd chip that point off. And you can.
So those are probably made in the 80s or
70s, 80s, something like that. I can't remember if there was a date code on the box, but it was late 70s, early 80s.
And there was lots of handle companies back in those days. All through Arkansas and Tennessee.
Yeah, I feel like everybody was trying to try their, try their luck at being the biggest handle company.
And most everyone varnished their handles.
Yeah, I think in the pre-World War II, speaking, there was every community had a handle manufacturing company. Through the country, or at least in that region of Tennessee and down to Missouri and Oklahoma, and then back over to the east. So they all had these little handle companies. That's just where you went for handles. But then once industry started picking up after the war and shipping was easy, then it started being like, okay, everybody's trying to brand their handles as the hardware store grade.
Yeah, and a lot of individual people, they either built their own pattern lathe or they bought a pattern lathe and made handles for to sell, and it was a sideline. They might have been a farmer or some other kind of main occupation, but they made handles in the off season or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. And handles, axe handles, the lathe that builds axe handles can build gun stocks and neck yokes for horses and eveners, and you've got wagon wheel spindles for wagon wheels, and those are all aspects that a handle company could be.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, there's a man up in Joliet, Montana, that is a coach has a coach works up there, and he built the replica of the 20 mule team borax wagons, and he's got a pattern lathe that he made just to make spokes. And I sent him a message one time asking him if he'd be interested in making an axe handle, and he said, no.
Yeah, he's like, not my expertise.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to have him make a swell knob handle, you know.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
He did not.
For sure. Yeah, so I feel like, but I feel like someone like him back in the day, you know, pre-war, you would have had, oh yeah, I can do that, right? I make wagon wheels, but yeah, I can do a run of a few, you know,
Sure.
a few dozen handles.
Right.
And each community had one of those.
You
Just
said-
like we have welders here, where
Yeah.
it's, you know, and
You just send him a handle to use for the guide, and he could
Yeah.
duplicate.
Yeah, and then Forest King started, or like in this example was Forest King, and that's 70s and 80s. That was when everybody was just trying to sell as many handles to as many hardware stores as they could, and that's kind of when that
Because
quality started going.
The axe manufacturing was on the decline, and the chainsaw manufacturing was on the increase.
Yeah, for sure, and then the equipment too. I mean, you've got the agricultural equipment and logging equipment, as far as like skid loaders.
Yeah.
You know, in the 80s, that's when everybody could afford, you know, some sort of machine to start doing stuff versus doing it by hand. Because now you can buy every attachment you want for a Bobcat. You can cut a tree down with a Bobcat. You know, they make tree shears that go on the front,
Right.
and stuff like that. So, yeah.
But anyway, the you know, I collect. I told you I collect shovels.
Yes.
But I really aim to collect a shovel that had mostly a D-handled shovel, and they're back in similar to the swell knob axe handles. They used a lot of wood to make a D-handle, solid wood D-handled shovel, and I've got several of those just because they're old and they are unique, and they're actually really comfortable to handle.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of got me into the D-handled digging tools and other.
Yeah, and if you don't know what a D-handled shovel is, there are various ones, and a modern D-handled shovel has, or a modern handled shovel like that has steel that comes each way.
Or plastic.
Or plastic, yeah, and has just a wooden top, or steel now, or plastic top, and then, but what George is really into is where it's all out of one chunk of wood. It's 5 or 6 inches wide, probably,
yeah, 5
and 6/4 at least, an 1.5 inch thick, and it's all carved out. So it comes down, it's all wood, and then it goes in the handle, and then it's got a hole in the middle, and it's just all one piece.
Yeah.
Did they ever stick steel through the handle top, or
there is a
rod?
There's a rod through the part where the grip is, and then there's a rod below that to keep it from coming.
Splitting apart. Yeah. When we were walking into the barn here, I was telling George, like, I should start making that handle, because you know my whole life is spent going, I should try to do that, and he's like, well, you'd be the only man in the world ever making that handle, and not sure how big the market is, so we're but hey, maybe it'll be Whiskey River premium shovel handles here in the next several years.
Yeah, and you could even be walking sticks. I mean, it wouldn't have to be a shovel, you know.
Yeah, you can make them as long as you want too.
Like a walking cane or whatever.
So if you guys ever have the opportunity to like use a coal shovel, because that's like where that shovel handle really comes in handy, is with a coal shovel
or
scoop shovel. Yeah.
For grain.
If you ever get the opportunity to use one with a all original wooden handle, it's where it's at. Yeah, you can't beat it. And versus your plastic one that's got a couple rivets through the side, and
usually split out.
Yeah, usually split out or dry out in the. They get brittle in the sun. You leave them outside, and it's just not a good shovel.
If you only go a little bit stronger than maybe a fiberglass.
Yeah. But they do make those steel, the steel top, and that's kind of like what we were all used to in, I don't know, 10 years ago.
I even got some that are cast iron D's, The D is made out of cast iron. It's called cast, and it has a tapered socket for the shaft to go into, and then put a crossbolt or a rivet in it.
At the shovel part?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then what's the top look like?
It's just cast iron. It's hollow. It's got a hollow opening in the handle.
Oh, crazy. Who makes that? Do you know?
There's a manufacturer. There's 2 names, and Johnson, I think. Something Johnson.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. Shovels are one of those things that you wouldn't think that there would be a like a preference. We always say in the warehouse that you wouldn't think you would have a preference at tape guns.
I discovered there is a shovel museum in Connecticut.
You're kidding? And have you ever been? You've never been?
No, never been, but they're online, and it's put out by the Ames Company.
Okay.
Ames is an old line company that made shovels and all kinds of digging tools and other kinds of tools. The O.A. Ames Company.
And so there's a actual museum, like a physical museum you can go to.
Yeah.
Is their factory still there? Is that?
No.
Is that?
That's where they were. Yeah.
Yeah. Is the museum located where the place was? Do you know?
I think so. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Shovels are just one of those things that you don't really think of until you use one for like a week straight, and then you're like, wow, I wish this was better. And
well, the shovels and the axes built the country.
They did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Railroads and.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know anybody who makes a all wooden shovel handle, but I think that's our next mission to figure out.
Well, and of course there was back in the day there was an all wood like a pitchfork, and a D-handled to handle loose.
Like a manure fork.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, a manure fork or hay.
Wooden forks. And
yeah.
It was all cut out one piece.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
they opened it up, they split them out and opened it up and steam bent them, I guess. And
yeah, for loose hay. Yeah, for getting it into piles out in the field. Right. It's kind of like a rake slash pitchfork.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I forgot about that. Did Ames make those?
I think so.
Yeah. Huh. How about a sigh? Have you ever
got a couple
used
of those? Two of them hanging in the house.
Yeah. Have you ever used them?
Yeah. And my granddad could handle a scythe real well. In fact, he used he raised a little garden on the farm, of course. And before he got out there with he had a team of horses and plowed the garden. He would cut all the weeds down with the scythe and turn them under with the turning plow.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I've used one very minimal amount, but I have wanted to use one.
Yeah, there is also a scythe-like tool called the cradle, and it gathers the cuttings into and you make a cut or two or three, and then you got this pile in this cradle, and you dump them out into a pile so you can bind them up with make them into a bundle.
Oh, I see. Yeah. And that's for like wheat and stuff.
Yeah.
I guess grass.
Rye.
Yeah,
wheat,
rye. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. The place up in northern Wisconsin that I was telling you about that we just picked up, that would be the perfect place for using a scythe because there's not really grass. It's where the glaciers came in. We just learned this is that the glaciers moved in, and when they started melting, this belt that kind of stretches down through Eau Claire and up towards Ashland is all this sand deposit from. It was a valley, so as the glaciers melted, all this sediment came in and left there. So there's all these little knolls and stuff, but grass does not grow there that well.
Yeah.
So you've got this kind of twiggy, weedy grass, and a scythe would be
stems.
Yeah, stems, thick stems, and I think that's where a scythe really comes into play, where you could. It's not use mowing it. If you get out your mower, it's just gonna be dusty and dirty.
I was at a tractor show in Pawnee, Oklahoma this in May, I guess it was, and a guy he had bought it. They have a flea market there.
Yeah.
And he had bought a scythe blade. He didn't really know what he bought.
Yeah.
He thought it was neat looking. and I said, well, you got to start there for a scythe. I said, you need a handle. And he said, oh, it's supposed to be.
It was supposed to have a handle on it. He was going to be on the floor or on the ground with it, just with his hand. He needs a sickle or those little hand sickles, hand size.
But that was a little bit hard to handle, but it was about that long.
I got into. My dad had me pulling bull thistles out of the horse pasture when I was a kid with a hand sickle, and you'd go out, you'd bend them over with your feet, and then you'd, hack them off with this hand sickle. And I always thinking, like, now that I look at it, I should have had like a spud bar or something. Yeah. But then I got into
or a good machete.
Yeah, or a good machete. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if he was gonna send his his child out there with a machete.
I'm sure they had corn knives too.
Yeah, corn knives. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I guess
I've
a
got
machete.
corn knives.
Yeah, I guess a machete and a scythe or a hand sickle are probably the same dangerous level of sending your child out into the pasture to do that.
Nowadays you'd be frowned upon, but for sure.
Yeah.
But
I ended up getting into stinging nettle because
the children today are never taught how to work.
No, yeah, they're not going to be. You shouldn't send your 8-year-old out with a machete right now. I don't think.
Unless you
want to lose a hand or hit him in
teach
the leg.
them how to respect and use the proper tool properly.
I think that's another aspect of if a 16-year-old came to me and asked me how, what he should know going into vintage tools is not only you should know what the tool looked like, but how it functions.
Right.
A lot of these tools are complex, so if you don't understand how it functions and how to use it, you're just going to be wasting your time trying to use that.
Yeah, and it's there's so many ways to misuse it, and to misuse it to the point of being extremely dangerous.
Yeah, or making it into making a junk. I mean, you could abuse it to the point where it's junk.
Yeah, you can run it.
And there's like a lot of old tools, like I know you have them, but they have those screwdrivers with wood scales on the side, and it's got steel. It's an all steel shaft, and that's designed so you can strike the end of it. Right. But if you never were taught that, and you never sat and looked at this as the function of a tool, you'd be like, oh, why is this screwdriver obnoxiously heavy? I think just understanding
that style of screwdriver is called the Perfect Handle Company. Perfect Handle Company made those screwdrivers, and you can still buy them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I did not know that. So it's still a company?
Yeah. I think they're still made in the USA.
Are they still wooden? Or are they plastic?
They got wood slabs. Yeah.
Wood slabs?
Yeah.
Huh. We'll have to look that up. I'll definitely have to Google that.
Garrett Wade Company, I think, sells them, and they have a catalog of sales.
Oh, yeah?
Garrett Wade, all woodworking tools.
Huh. I'll have to
I think they
look
have
at that.
the Perfect Handle.
I've got a couple that I really like as my main screwdrivers, and
I've got some I need to make some scales for.
Oh, yeah?
And I've got Bodark to make them with.
There you go. Yeah, Bodark. That's an Oklahoma wood, or that region.
Yeah, it's from the Ozarks, Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Kansas. It kind of is like a shrub, but it really grows into huge trees too, and it's got thorns all over it. It makes a wonderful windbreak tree, which they used after the Dust Bowl days.
They brought it in for that.
Yeah.
Is it from overseas?
No, it's native.
It's native. Okay.
Native tree.
Yeah.
And the when you say Bodark, that's kind of a contraction of the Beau d'Arc, which was the French word for the tree, because the Indians used it to make their bows out of.
Oh.
And so
bow wood.
French called it Beau d'Arc.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting.
Beau d'Arc.
Cool. Well.
Sometimes called Osage Orange too.
Oh yeah, and is it the same?
Yeah. Osage Orange.
Oh, crazy! I didn't know that. We've talked a lot about that because we have Osage, in these field lines out here. Yeah, this is like
the hedge apples on them.
Yeah, and they have they kind of grow in this twisted knot style. You rarely see them big enough that you could get a beam out of them or a board, but they I don't know. We don't have any Osage in that field line, but a lot of guys leave them in their field lines because it holds the ground together and creates a good windbreak and stuff.
It's got thorns all over.
Yeah. And it's kind of an orange wood.
Yeah. It'll turn real
brown. Dark brown
when you expose it to the air. But
but when you first cut it, it's very orangey. Yellow orangey. That's funny. I didn't realize, because we've talked about Bodark. I didn't realize that was also Osage. I'm looking in this. Yeah. But I used to cut it out of field lines when I was a kid, and super thorny, not comfortable, and it grabs itself.
Once it's dry, it's cured, it is harder than you know what.
Yeah.
You can't hardly drive a nail in it.
Yeah.
They make a lot of fence posts out of it.
Yeah, for sure. And we don't have anything that gets big enough here to make fence posts. I don't know if it's that everybody cuts it or whatever. Yeah, maybe climate, but down by you said you cut down that tree that was
it's about that big.
Yeah, like that. would never see Osage around here that's that big.
And
Maybe 10 inches.
Like a fool, I cut it up into firewood mix rather than making some blanks for axe handles.
Yeah, yeah, that's how it works, right?
Yeah. There's another tree on that property.
That you want?
Yeah, I've got to go check on it one of these days and see if it's still alive and the guy wants to cut it down.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be really, really cool. Are they straight? How long are they straight
Oh
for?
man, this was pretty straight and tall. Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah. Well, George, I think we're gonna go. We should probably get a bite to eat. I'm getting
I guess
hungry.
we covered about everything.
Yeah, we can do this again sometime. I'm Brandon. This is George. And
Old Man George.
Old Man George. So until next time, see you guys.